Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Thanks for waiting. We're here with my friend Jaren Scott. You guys have seen him before on the channel, and got a fun one tonight, and I think one that's gonna provide a lot of understanding. So, Jaren, thanks for coming on tonight. Really
Thank
appreciate it.
you for having me. I definitely appreciate it.
And so, yeah, guys, as you know, the topic for tonight is going to be consequences of alcohol. I've dealt with alcohol in the past, and Jaren has as well, and so
Mhm.
we're gonna hear some stories from friends, family of Jaren's that have kind of not woken up to some of the dangers of it and some of the consequences that can come without quitting. So, uh, yeah, let's start it off here. Big shout out to the zero subscribers, the zero viewers. But
There we go.
we're gonna have a good time anyway.
Talking to a ghost
So
audience. I'll just talk to
yeah,
you. Yeah, that works.
yeah, pretty much. So yeah, first one, man, I wanted to ask you about was so Jaren sent me a text, or Instagram message the other day from a text from an old friend, right? So
Yeah, it was a friend of a friend. So it was a guy. He was actually my brother's best friend in high school. My brother's 2 years behind me in school. This kid is actually my age, so he got held back a couple of times just because I should have known back in the day. Like he just didn't really have it together. But and at one point after college, I decided it'd be a good idea, get a big house and rent it out to all my high school buddies. And this kid was my roommate for a bit. It's not a good idea, guys. Never do that. It turns into a party house. And if you're trying to get your career off the ground, it's not fun. But anyways, I had that experience, lessons learned. That's what life's all about. And this guy, he was drinking quite a bit in the house already. And then I left. I came back to Mexico. So I've been back and forth between Mexico and the US for years and just kind of lost sight of him over the years, or just lost touch, as what that happens to a lot of people as you become more and more an adult and your paths start to diverge a bit more as life goes on, and kind of forgot about him entirely. And then I got this message the other day from one of his good friends. So apparently, after he lived with me, he had lived with other people. And I think there's some drug addiction in there too. Again, I haven't seen this
mm,
guy in like a decade, but he was really close to me. He was my brother's best friend growing up. My brother had cut him off years before I did, and I never really cut him off. It's just we kind of grew apart because I live a completely different life now. And so this guy apparently has kind of kept tabs on him. He's back in my hometown, small town where I grew up. And he sent me this message. Yeah, it was like 1 or 2 days ago, the one you're about to share on the screen. And in my 20s, I had gotten messages like that before from people, and it was actually kind of quite sad. But since I'm not really a drinker anymore, I don't run around in those circles. So once, and what Joel and I will get into this, once kind of my big drinking buddies from my 20 kind of either got off the bottle or they're no longer here with us, which is the main topic. Then I don't really get those messages anymore. So it's been a long time since I got a message like this, and I figured, well, Joel and I talk about these topics, and I shall share.
what was your reaction when you got this text? Because again, friend you haven't talked to in so long, out of the blue, just boom, kind of lays this on you. What was your first thoughts?
I was surprised he lived this long. So again, like I said,
Mm,
he's my age, although he was a couple years behind in school. So most of my friends that never quit drinking out of high school or college or military, I always identify that like 18 to 21-year-old time frame in your life. Whatever you're doing, some sort of educational program, military vocational program, or you're doing nothing and you're you're kind of accelerating this process. A lot of times when guys don't have stuff going on, they get into these habits, or they find themselves battling these types of addictions. Whereas when you're busy all the time, it's kind of hard to develop an addiction, because the busy, I guess you could say the busyness is an addiction in and of its own. Like we all know the workaholic
mhm,
types, and I find myself getting to that. I'm like really getting into something. I'm like, oh my god, I'm not taking care of other responsibilities. There's like dishes in the
mm,
sink and like trash sitting here. I never fucking live that way. But uh, so this in this case, he continued like the high school. He didn't go to college, but like high school kind of party years. And a lot of guys do that after that 18 to 21-year range. They kind of spills over into their adult life and they don't realize it. And that happened to me too.
yeah.
I got to the age of about 27. I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm an alcoholic. And I never realized it until people in my family started dying on both sides of family. So all of my uncles and an aunt on my dad's side, and then one aunt on my mom's side, and my dad's parents both died of alcoholism real young too. So you learn how to kind of see this stuff. And I fell into that too. Like once people in the family started popping off, I'm like, oh no, like I got to get a handle on this, because the people who don't drink, they're like all centenarians, and they're super healthy and they're super fit and they're super happy. And the ones that do drink, they die when they're like 60. And this is like
Wow.
prolonged drinking. This is like your 6 pack after work type thing. I think most of the guys in my family drink bourbon, like bottom shelf bourbon, stuff that like kids or college party people drink. And it wasn't a lot. It's not like they got screwed up every night. I remember my dad used to drink a lot too when I was a kid. It was like sometimes, yeah, sometimes he'd be bad. He'd wake up, like have a couple drinks, and I remember him telling me, he's like, just maintain your buzz throughout the day. And when I go to like music festivals or beach events, I rarely drink, but if I do, I remember that. Like, all right, just get to that point and kind of maintain. So these were these types of people. They were productive, they had careers, they had families, they actually surprisingly had good marriages too. But the alcoholism was a key component in marriage. I think there's a codependency there. So
Okay.
these folks in my direct bloodline would die before they're 60 or so. Well, my buddies, the types of guys, when I came out of high school, I was adventurous. I went out and I went to school in Mexico, and I traveled all over Latin America, and I played some ball down here. So naturally I attracted those types of people. I didn't do a lot of drinking in college, and rarely any smoking weed or any drugs or anything. It was more so after college, once I was starting my career. And again, that house that turned into a
Yeah.
party house, found myself on the bottom of the staircase drinking on a Tuesday night or Tuesday morning at like 4 a.m. Like, oh God, I got to go to work
Wow.
here in a bit. But when you're in your early 20s, you can still kind of do that. You have that resiliency. But it gets to the point where as you creep in your mid 20s, later 20s, you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore if I want to be really serious about life and my health. And my
Mm.
goals started changing too for me personally. And at that point, again, when you make more of a commitment to health and you start going down that path or self-development or whatever it is, like I always have numerous goals across many goal sets and different facets of my life. So I just started kind of distancing myself from those people. But I'd say around the age 27 or so, the age all the rock stars kick off, it was around 27 where people started going, like guys I grew up with.
Wow.
Unfortunately, there's a couple guys, they came back from the war kind of damaged. So I graduated high school in 05. A lot of my friends were older than me because I was a couple of years ahead in school. So a lot of my friends graduated in like 03. And that's right when like the Iraq invasion kicked off. We were in Afghanistan a couple of years prior to that. So a lot of my buddies that I grew up with had some sort of combat experience, and they came back. And again, when you're drinking too, you can't see it in other people. You're just like, oh, that's what we do.
Mm.
We get together and we drink. And then I go
Mm.
on with my life, and then we get together and we drink. But what you don't see is when they're not drinking with you, that they're still drinking. So I had a couple of friends like that. I had a roommate my first time down here in college, when I was, or first time down here in Mexico when I was playing ball in college. I was here for 2 years on a direct exchange. He was one of those guys on his GI Bill, and he was my roommate actually. And I remember,
Mm.
kind of like I mentioned, like my dad. He reminded me of my dad a lot. Actually, he and I got along really well. He's quite a bit older than me, and
Cool.
kind of looked at him like an older brother for a bit, and
Sure.
for a bit because he's no longer with us. But when we were roommates, I remember, and we used to joke about it. He'd wake up in the morning and he'd buy bottom shelf vodka. Here in Mexico, it's called Oso Negro. It was 53 pesos back in the day. Back in the day, the exchange rate was 10-1. It's like 18-1 now. Sometimes it fluctuates. It's like for $5, like not good vodka. So he'd buy a handle of that, or what was just your standard bottle, like what, 750 milliliters. He'd buy one of
Yeah.
those,
So
and I remember
yeah.
I don't have one here to show you, but they sell like fruit water, and you can get sugar-free fruit water here. So he'd get like sugar-free lemonade, giant 1.5 liter bottle. It was on the way to school. I'd chug half of it, and then he would pour the bottle in it, mix it up, and he didn't chug it or anything. He would just, throughout the day, the entire day, he would sip on it. Started in the morning, again, never chugged it, never did whatever. He'd have his own bottled water, and he had this, and he'd always carry it around, and we called it we called it elixir, and then added his name to it. So he'd
Mm.
carry it around, and like we worked out together. We'd walk to school together. I played ball, so I had
Wow.
practices in the evenings, but we'd go home and we'd cook together, and we'd play guitar, and we'd hang out together, and we'd go to parties together. And even when we went to nightclubs, he would never buy any drinks, never do any shots. He always had that bottle with him. It's like, it was like what he needed to be normal, I suppose you could
Mm.
say. So with him, I think I was about the age of 27. He must have been like 34, 35 or so.
Okay.
He was clean for a while. They put a stent in his liver, so like these effects start compounding really quickly, and it can actually happen quite young. So in his case, they put a stent in his liver, and then he called me one night, and it was pretty clear he was sloshed. He had just a bunch of bad things happen in his life, and he was clean for a bit too. I think going on a year or so. And his brother-in-law had committed suicide, and then his dad committed suicide. So he did all he knew to do in those situations. He hit the bottle, called us. He's like, "Hey, something's going on. They're getting my he has a twin sister. He had a twin sister. Hey, she's going to take me to the hospital." And thank God the last phone call he had with me, he's like, "Yeah, they're going to put me into some other procedure and try to fix this because whatever, like liver failure, organ failure, whatever it was." He's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know I love you, man." And then his sister called, and a couple hours later, like earlier in the morning, my brother and I were actually on the way up there because he didn't have like any medical advocates for him or anything since all of his immediate family was
Okay.
gone. And his sister was on the sauce too. So I was living in Houston at the time. My brother had just come out of a training accident in the Marines. So he was doing his recovery with me as I was, getting on my shit and getting to my divorce and everything. So we hit the road and we were going to head up to, my buddy was in Arkansas. So we were going to head up to Arkansas, and we weren't even out of Texas yet. And the sister called, she's like, "Yeah, he's gone." I'm just like, "Oh shit. All right." So that was a big one because it was close to me, and I carried a lot of guilt around that one for a while because he would have done it whether I was there or not. But back when it was starting, when we were in college and he was my roommate, I was really into fitness. I rarely drank because I took my sports seriously at that time. I took my academics seriously. I still do. I still rarely drink now. But at that time, I should have been like, "Hey, like, knock it off. You're not drinking your fucking 1.5 liter of your elixir every day and just maintaining." Or we'd go to the gym together and he'd be like maxing out on bench and he'd be breathing in my face. I'm like, "Dude, I'm gonna get
Whoa.
buzzed just from the fumes on your breath." So me now, if I were back in my 18, 19, 20-year-old body, I'd be like, "All right, no, we're not doing this." So that's why I think it's probably a good thing to talk about these things as far as guys like, hey, it's awesome if you're not drinking anymore, but remember that at one point your identity was largely formed around that, and there might be people you care about, whether it's in your family or friend circle, maybe romantic partners, former romantic partners, whomever. And you got to ask yourself that question, like, all right, am I going to let our paths diverge, or is this someone I want to try to save? Like, you really can't save anyone; they have to save themselves.
Correct.
But
Yep.
with the hindsight I have now, I think I could have at least moved that path in a different direction, or at least had an influence, or could have done more. So this isn't necessarily for those guys that have successfully been off the sauce for a while. This is more for the people like, hey, my brother's drinking a lot, or you know what, my
Mm.
my wife gets pretty tipsy every night, and I know for women especially, like, oh, it's wine 30, and like, hey, sweetie, just because you're drinking wine does not mean you're not an alcoholic. So look at these things around you, because it just kind of happens one day. Like I said, I woke up one day, found myself drinking too much. I'm like, nope, this is not who I am. We are not doing this anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't get to that point. So again, going back to that message, this guy was one of those guys, just kind of went through his party phase, like the male equivalent of the party phase, that 18 to 21-year-old time frame. Although he
Mhm.
started drinking pretty young too. He was one of the
Okay.
he was one of those kids. So two different people. The text message is a guy. He's still alive. So he started drinking pretty early in high school, and he's one of those kids. His I don't know a better way to say it. His mom was really hot, and so she always had rich guys after her, and so she'd be in L.A. all the time or Miami, and she'd be jet setting around, and she left him this big ass house that he'd always throw parties in. So he started drinking really
Wow.
young, like 14, 15 years old, because he didn't really have any parental type structure, and unfortunately, I think that's a larger issue. He never really quite could get himself together. He's my age now.
Yeah.
Like, he's trapped. I haven't talked to him in years, but it's like he's trapped in a 15-year-old body. And the last time I did
Mm.
talk to him, I was probably around 27, 28 or so. I'm 35, going on 36 good in a week now. So
Wow. Happy
yeah, it's
birthday.
almost been like a decade ago. For Thanksgiving, he hit me up, and again, our paths had started diverging a bit. Our lives started going in different directions. But he hit me up, and he's like, "Hey, heard you're in town for Thanksgiving," and he sounded good on the phone. I'm like, "All right, yeah, cool. Come to my mom's house, and you can join the family for dinner." And again, my brother and he were best friends in high school, so it was kind of like my brother, he and myself, we'd hang out. It was like kind of our group for a while there. And so it's like, yeah, come over for Thanksgiving. And he came over, and something was off. It was like he was on a tranquilizer,
Hmm.
like not even drunk. I mean, he could have been so drunk he didn't
Okay.
know where he was, but he was off. His speech was really slurred and his whole demeanor was off, and the life in his eyes, like he was already kind of starting to die inside. You see that in a
Hmm.
lot of alcoholics, that whatever it is, the ring light, you don't see that illumination. There's just something amiss there. So we noticed these things in him, and he didn't smell like booze though, but he was on something. And at one point, he was like slurring, he was being sloppy, he was socially kind of off, saying things that normally you don't say. Again, my mom had known him since he was a kid because he always came over to the house and shit when I was growing up because he was my brother's best friend. So my mom's like, yeah, something's off with him. And at one point, took him down to the basement, sat him on the couch, like, hey man, is everything good? I was kind of trying to talk to him. Oh yeah, man, I'm fine. Like, all right, dude, I'm gonna like put on some TV. You stay here. We'll finish dinner. And I could tell he needed some talking to. I was like, I'll go ahead and sit down and talk to you, man. I haven't seen you in a while, and you don't look good. And then at one point after dinner, we come down, and his like pants were down, and he was like half naked, sprawled, like barely hanging onto the couch. And my
Oh
mom's like,
wow.
get him out of here. He's gone.
Hmm.
And for me, it's like when you start cutting off friends that are still engaging in bad habits that you've left behind. It's one of those,
Yeah.
dude, you embarrass me in front of my family. Like we're not friends anymore. We can't be hanging out anymore. So that turns out
Yeah.
I always get long-winded with my stories, but I bring them back
It's
home.
all good, man.
In that message, there's some context there. So, hey,
Yeah.
so and so has like
Absolutely.
3 to 6 months left to live, uh, and so apparently, and I learned this too when my brother was in his accident. There's usually the person who's like the lead communicator that communicates with the outside world as far as what's going on and whatnot. So I was in that position. My brother's accident. People would try to come to the hospital or go straight to the room or call the family directly. I'm like, nope, there's a Facebook page. We will update it when we get updates. Everything goes through here. So I think this is what that guy's doing. And he knows I'm into like these types of spaces too. And I had to
Hmm.
deliberate the other day, like, shit, do I want to reach out to this guy? Like the old friend of mine? Like, I don't know if I want
Sure.
negative energy in my life, but I mentioned that story with my other buddy.
Yeah.
Like I could have done something. So, Joel, you're the expert. What do you do here in these situations?
I mean, great question. And you're not alone in that struggle, like what to do. Because you said it earlier that you can't save someone. Like, and that's one of the things people that do, like, let's say addiction recovery coaching, that they struggle with. It's like, how do you lead someone down the path, but at the same time, like, respect where they are, respect their boundaries and stuff. So, um, for me, let's just say I was on the other end where I was the guy who was embarrassing families. Like when I was 20, I think 22, we went to California with my best friend. We played sports together. We were homies in high school, and I got blackout drunk on like the third night. We were in Redondo Beach, California, and we were staying at his parents' friends. She had like a really like 3-story like bungalow kind of thing, and I smoked some weed too, and I just blacked out. And apparently, I passed out at Joe's Crab Shack. We went there to eat, and I
Oh,
was in the
place is
bathroom for like
good.
2 hours. I fucking missed it.
You
I was
missed
so
it. Well, I
pissed.
mean, you were
I missed
there
it
in body, but yeah, in spirit,
in body, not in spirit.
yeah.
Yep. And and yeah, for like 2 hours I was there, and then the next night we, you know, just was not like in my right mind, right? And so like she never, the lady we stayed at never like reached out again to say, hey, why don't you bring Joel by for another trip? I'm pretty sure like I burned that bridge. And so what I found is that, to answer your question, coming full circle here, I think it's best to maybe reach out, say what's up, how you doing, like kind of keep those strong boundaries through text,
Mhm.
right? Like not get too deep in the conversation, not kind of end up like, hey, we should hang out, like that kind of thing, right? Just kind of
Oh no,
check
I'm out of
in,
the
see how
country.
they're
Yeah, it's not
doing.
going to happen.
Okay, yeah, not even gonna happen too. And I
Actually,
think it's
he
good
came
that,
down here and visited me in college, and yeah, we
okay,
had a very good time. That one of those examples. It was a drinking weekend for me, but that was probably like every other day for him. Just the background changed.
sure. He's like, oh, I'm just gonna invite Jaren into one of my days, a day in the
Yeah,
life.
exactly. Yep.
And for you,
Yeah,
you're like, oh
exactly
my
that.
god, we're getting fucked up. And
Uh,
yeah, so again, I would just recommend, just saying a what's up, maybe, asking how he's doing. And there's always like recovery resources. Say like, hey, I just wanted to maybe even share like your story with recovery a bit, like, hey, I got Hey, I'm not drinking as much anymore. I wonder if you're still in that scene or whatever. And then, kind of go off that. And I do have like some free resources too. I'll share them with you. And then like
Oh
ton of
yeah,
free
yeah, of
meetings
course.
and stuff. And then I'll put that in the comments too. So if any of you guys want to pick that up, you can. It's got, I don't know, like 30 plus resources, movies, books, YouTube channels, etc. And they're all free too, which is, well, maybe not the movies. You might have to get those from like Amazon or something. It's yeah, and I wanted to touch on too a point you said that when you were in college, you weren't drinking as much. You were pretty strict. And however, when you
If
got into that frat
if
house,
I did,
so
it was like the occasional binge drinking. Like I
yeah,
could throw them back, but looking back at it, it still wasn't really that much because when you're in shape, you start to feel sick when you start drinking. So
mm,
for college, yeah, for college, I was known. No, I never got super screwed. I never got super screwed up. I could maintain. That's what I was known for. I could maintain
yeah.
all weekend. So I'd start drinking early, and then it'd be like 4 a.m. and everyone's passed out, and I'm up just chilling because I got like the 3 beer buzz, but I kept it riding at maintenance level the whole day. That's why I don't do shots or shotgun or anything like that.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember back. It's been so long. I was like, no, how did I used to do that?
And I asked because it to me it sounds like because you had the sports environment, because you were exercising regularly, it sounds like that almost kept you from going down that path to a degree.
Structure.
Structure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
And
as
for
soon
me,
as you
it was more
go ahead.
important to be a good baseball player and be a good student and make money coming out of school than it was to go get drunk every single night. That just didn't sound like much fun to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And
I hear that.
I do have another thing. I do have another side
Yeah,
vice. It
please.
could be an addiction. For guys that follow my channel, like I talk about the dating topics, but in college, when you're a foreign baseball player, you have plenty of options with the ladies. So let's say that alcohol is not conducive for my game by any means. It makes me sloppy and kind of stupid and slurry faced, and I just don't like it. You'll lose opportunities. You'll screw up relationships really easily because you're not quite all the way there. So I also had that too. Back then, I was a serial monogamist, so I normally had a girlfriend, but typically it's like, all right, go get stupid drunk with a bunch of other people, or go out of town for the weekend with my team, or if we're not traveling that weekend, then do something with my girlfriend, go on a date, go to the movie, go to the park or something like that. So that other activities that were more fun existed outside of drinking.
Okay. And so then, fast forward, you got into that. I'm going to call it a frat house because I was in a fraternity in college too. It's like when you're with the boys, like, what else are you going to do? You're gonna study together? No, you're gonna drink
And
and
and it
do
was
drugs.
fun. It was really
It was a
fun.
blast.
It was
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
fun. Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what for any young guy out there that might be like, in college or stuff, what would you recommend for them to do if they're in that scene with a bunch of friends? They're seeing that maybe they're going down a path that they don't really want to go down. What would you advise them or suggest to them?
Yeah, it's tough again because that's likely your whole identity. If your entire friend circle are people that you just party with on the weekends, or hell, maybe you're partying every night and you don't really give a shit about school. It's just a 4 year vacation for you. There's plenty of people like that. But if you find, you know what, I got to the point when I really considerably cut out my drinking was I'm like, you know what, I don't have any friends. The only people that are
Hmm.
my friends, drinking is the primary activity and us being together is kind of secondary. So I did a mindset.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not completely cold turkey. I had a whiskey last night, but that's not the primary activity. The primary activity was
Mm.
going out with a girl I've been friends with forever. She used to be one of my former main girls, so she was in town. Take her out, tried a new restaurant, plan some content. Like we did a goofy reel last night, so we're trying to plan for that. And while
That's
we were there,
great.
it's a really nice restaurant, and they have decent American bourbon. I'll get an old fashioned. And had one, and just kind of that's it. All I needed. But that was the drinking the old fashioned was secondary to the experience. It's not like I want to go
Mm.
get a drink. Let's go get a drink. It's like, oh, let's go try at this restaurant. I'm like, oh, hey, they have that bourbon I like. Yeah, I'll do an old fashioned. So for me, that was the mindset shift where, okay, if
Okay.
drinking is a primary activity and then your friendship comes second, then that might be the point where you want to start reconsidering to where like, all right, and I do this all the time too. You audit your friend circle. How do I know these people? What value do they add to my life? What value do I add to their life? Is it a reciprocal relationship or is it a one-sided relationship? Do we add value to each other's lives at all? Those are interesting questions to ask yourself. So For me, it was a point I was living in San Diego, and I was like, you know what? Or I think a buddy asked me. I started getting into the fitness scene. So if you get more into fitness, you get less into drinking because those two don't go together very well. And once you get fit, like you can date hot chicks that are fit and they do fun stuff. So like instead of going out and getting plastered, you're up early in the morning watching the sunrise, hiking a mountain. That's way more fun than getting drunk. So when you
Sure.
start, so I started tiptoeing into that scene, and I think one of my like new fitness friends, they're like, "Hey, and these other guys, like, are they even your friends? Like, what have you guys done other than drink since you've known them?" Like, uh, nothing. Like, what value do they add to their life? Like, would they help you move if you called them? You're like, "Hey, I'm in a bind financially." Would they pony up the money? It probably depends on the circumstances, but are these people your friends? And I had to, that
Mm.
was a question. I had to sit with myself for, I was like, no, I don't really have any friends. These are all drinking acquaintances. And so if you find yourself, and again, these are questions I ask myself, they might not resonate with you, but if you need a starting point, start asking yourself those questions. Like, hey, if we weren't drinking, what would we be doing right now? Would we have anything in common? What would there be anything to do? But if
Right.
drinking is always a primary activity, and then you're like, hey, my friendship is just kind of a byproduct of me drinking, like, is it really even a friendship? What am I getting out of it? Or, what is this person getting out of me? Then I think that's a good starting point in terms of identifying that you might be getting a little too far into it. Another one for me, too,
Cool.
is not drinking alone. So every now and then, maybe like I don't even have alcohol in the house. So maybe like I think the last time I ordered a bottle was like back in August, and it sat in my freezer for months and months. And then, oh no, eventually some girl came over and she was already drunk and she was being really annoying. And at like 3 a.m. I come out, she was making noise and she'd finish off my bottle. So it's a
Oh, the
turn off
rascals.
too. Like, yeah,
The
dating
rascals.
problems, it's a turn off if you're an alcoholic, because for me, this chick, I'm like, hey, you gotta go. Like you can drink all you want, but let me sleep. Don't be
Mhm.
waking me up at 3 a.m. I've got shit to do in the morning. So if you find yourself drinking like that alone, again, for her, drinking was the primary activity. Me being here, although she was at my place, was secondary. So look for those things in yourself or potentially in others. But for me, I knew another rule I made was no drinking alone. Like maybe a single drink, or if I'm experimenting with cocktails. But if I drink, it's still not a lot because it makes me feel physically ill, and
Mm.
I'll do it in company of other people. And again, it's not like I want to go get drunk. Let me call up all my alcoholic friends and go out to a bar together. It's more like, oh, this guy's in town and he wants to talk about this project. And then, oh, this one girl I'm dating might like the girl that he's dating or his girl here. And oh, these two other buddies live in the neighborhood and they have new girlfriends. I'll get them out and then we'll go find a cool restaurant or a park or something, or sit down somewhere. And then, okay, yeah, we'll order a round of drinks or two maybe. But it's not like, hey, I want to go do shots, bro. Like bros, who's down? It's none of that anymore. So I think those might be some good starting points. And as far as questions to ask yourself, like, am I going too far?
We'll clip that. And it's I
Yes. How about the clips, man?
How about them clips?
Yeah.
It's so interesting you say that too, because in the recovery support groups, which I can't say by name, by the way, because of privacy purposes, but put
Gotcha.
two and two together, you know what they are. They say those exact two things about the people that come in. They're drinking alone, and their only relationships are with, we call them using buddies. So
Oh, okay.
yep. So I experienced that a ton as well. Like I got clean and I was like, yeah, and it was almost like I was almost a little embarrassed. I'm like, dude, the only reason we hung out was because of substances.
Yep.
Like yeah, no connection besides that. And
Whereas you replace
yeah,
that. So like my buddies now, they're my
right.
gym buddies, or they're my travel buddies, and they're my business
Mm,
buddies, or they're my
mhm.
top 10% private group buddies, or they're music buddies. Yes, when we get together, there might be drinking, but it's the shared interest that brought us together in the first place.
Okay. And see, when you said that too, I instantly thought, like, oh man, would Jared and I even be hanging out if we weren't doing YouTube? And the answer is probably no. And I think
Where
that's
would we
okay.
find each other?
Right.
Right? Like
Yeah, and
we live
that's
in
my,
two different worlds.
old ad yeah, different countries, and that's my
Yeah,
old addict
literally.
brain, black and white thinking, where it's like, "Oh, because I had that mindset with alcohol, it has to be, like, the same thing with everyone else." It's like, no, no, it's a totally different realm, so if anyone is also in that headspace, like, yeah, it's totally cool to have
I'm
relationships based on activities and stuff.
Joel, you mentioned a good point, and it spurred an idea in my head. Again, it's been so long since I've identified myself as a drinker. I'm going on a decade, like of not. I don't like getting drunk. Let's just say that, or like the mindset shift, whatever you want to call it. I know it would be dishonest to say like I'm a non-drinker, especially to an audience that's potentially recovering from addiction. I do drink, but I'm not a drinker. To make that distinction.
Yeah, yeah.
And but you mentioned the black and white thinking. And I remember that too. And again, it just spurred a thought. It's not like I've sat on this and deliberated on it before, but I remember that people that worked for me back at that time, because I was functional, didn't drink during the day. I drink at night just to kind of unwind and just get all the stress off my shoulders, or you bury it down. And I remember people that worked for me that always tell me like, hey, you're an all or nothing guy. It's either 100% on or 100% off. There's no in between. And with my emotions too, I remember people used to tell me like, dude, we can't read your emotions at all. Like you could be, when tragedies happen in the family or something and everyone knows about it because it's on national TV. I'm like Forrest Gump in a sense, where I've had a couple of those instances in my life. And people like, dude, we can't tell if you're upset. Like what's going on with you? You're just kind of blank. And I noticed that once I severely curtailed the drinking, then I can show my emotions. There are emotional states. People are usually never really confused with what I'm thinking or what I'm experimenting emotionally wise. And then the black and white thinking, that went away too. It was like, okay. And I tell guys on my channel all the time, like, don't fall into dogmatic thinking. Yes, this could be a valid point, but it's not for everyone. Be sure to pick it apart and swirl it around in your mouth and then spit it out and put it back together and see if it still sticks.
Sure.
So I've definitely moved away from the like my way or no way at all, or the black and white thinking. I think you put it perfectly, but I'd be curious to know more about that in terms of, to your previous question, younger guys or gals watching that's like, hey, am I going a little too far? What do the signs look like? Or again, maybe it's not even you, but you're in the situation where I am, like, hey, all my friends that drink, they die before they're 30. All my family that drinks, they die before they're 60. I want this to not happen. So how do I identify these things myself and change the trajectory of my life? But also when you do that, and I did that years ago, when you see other people like, that guy's still at it, still, still going. And again, a lot of times you don't keep tabs on these people because I like how you call it using buddies. Well, you have different things going on in your life, but when you get messages like that screenshot you shared earlier, it brings you back. You're like, oh, yeah. So like what, Joel, what would that look like in terms of black and white thinking for identifying signs in other people, or if you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I'm great question, and kind of ripping off what you said there. I think that's something I've been learning recently too, is that because somebody is living a different lifestyle, that you can still have a great relationship. You can still connect. Like I was very in the mindset, like, yo, if you're not sober, like we cannot hang out. And I was like, I was looking back, and I'm like, this is gonna be a lonely life. A lot of people use something, right? And so like this is a great example here. Like Jaren drinks on occasion. He's obviously not doesn't have issues with it. It's not like destroying his life or anything. And so it's opening my eyes to see that, okay, there are people out there that can live a life using. I'm not one of those people, and some of my other friends aren't as well. But part of, I think, being like in a harmonious symbiotic relationship with the world is realizing that there are going to be people that come in that do things that might not agree with my values or your values. And so that's been a big help. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, again, as you got going, it spurred the thought that I remember going through an activity internally where I was like, all right, I need to structure my value system and then put them into a very firm hierarchy. So for me with the alcohol thing, I mean, I make it sound like now like it's weird. I feel like a different person. I don't ever really have a desire to drink. Whereas years ago, I remember getting to the point. I remember having thoughts like waking up on a Sunday morning and kids are outside playing and birds are chirping and the sun's shining through your window and you're like, close it because it's like piercing your soul because you're hungover. And I remember having the thought like, what would it be like to get up early on a Sunday and just have a normal day? And I couldn't imagine that. It seemed foreign to me. Whereas now it's like, I mean, I sleep in a bit on Sundays. I'm up early on Saturdays for podcasts and stuff, but on Sunday, it's like, I've got things to do. I've got a day planned out. Sunday's just like a Monday to me. It's just a normal day. So I feel like a completely different person when I when I say that, but I remember that thought going through my head, like what would it be like to not be hungover on like on a weekend day? And I deviated a bit from the main point, but in terms of the value system, I remember like around the same time I was having these thoughts, like, okay, we got to get this together. Like, this is not who I am. This is not part of who I want to be or who I want to be known as. And the same thing helped for me with weight loss too. It might not be like the most psychologically healthy thing to do, but in terms of structuring my belief system, like, okay, my desire to drink is like, I had to push it down there and put other things higher in the order of what's important to me as a person. And one of them, like for the alcohol thing, is like I put vanity above it. Like, I want to have nice skin. I want to look good. I want to have life in my eyes. I want to be able to go out and not be slurry faced and be able to interact in social type situations. I don't want to be that guy who's closing down the bar every time. And for me, vanity might be the wrong word, but I remember at the time I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna be a vain person. I want a six pack. Guess what? You're not gonna get a six pack if you're getting drunk every night. It's just not gonna happen. So I mean, you might be able to, like, take that back. There's certain classes of drugs you can do. Like, if you're boozing every night and not eating at all, yes, you can get a six pack, but you're also killing yourself. So it's kind of one of those things, like a skinny guy with abs is like a fat chick with tits. It doesn't really count. So we might have to cut that for the censors.
Oh, man.
I
was with you, man. Yeah, like vanity was a huge reason I got clean.
Okay,
I'm
good.
like,
Yeah,
oh
I feel like I'm crazy saying it. I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want to fuck hot chicks. I want to be the guy who shows up to the party like, hey, that guy's interesting. He's the man. And when you're doing shots, again, I never really did shots, but when you're the guy whose focus is, there we go, going back to that earlier point, my focus is like, ooh, I got invited to a wedding, open bar, and then I find all the other drinkers, and then we just kind of hang out drinking, then I'm not really there. I'm not really present. I'm not really having the experience. So for vanity, it's like, I want to be the guy that shows up in like that nice white linen suit at a destination wedding. Like, who the hell is this guy? I want to get to know this guy. Now I will still have drinks at the wedding, but that is not the primary purpose of doing that. So yeah, that was me putting vanity first. Now I don't really know what it is. It's just not a part of who I am. So it's just weird.
Sure.
It's weird to think about it. So guys that are able to do that, like Joel said, not everyone can do that, but if you're able to, it eventually becomes not a part of you. And and for me, it feels foreign. You can hear me stuttering and stammering. It feels foreign trying to bring these memories up. You're like, oh yeah, God, I used to live that way.
Right. It's almost like looking back at a bad dream. So, well, if the memories
it
were
is,
great,
yeah, it doesn't seem real.
Oh shit, I did that. So a lot of things that happen to people that are in recovery is that they have using dreams. So every once in a while, you'll get a dream where it's like, you're boozing or you're smoking weed or something, and you've relapsed, and your whole life's going to shit. And you wake up and you're just like, you're like, we look around, and it's like, oh, thank God, thank God that was just a dream, because they get dark.
Yep.
Real quick.
Well, funny thing that you mentioned, like I'm usually more of a social smoker, but I will take like of weeds, and I will take a couple of hits of Jack Herrera off of a pen for like more creative type stuff, and and again, having a good like support network or whatever. But I have a vocal coach. I'm doing some music projects. My voice is all screwed up because we really fucking hammered it today. But so my eyes are tearing up. But my coach, like, I practice I record my practice sessions and I send it to her, and she's like, "You sound a lot better when you're by yourself and when you're here." But our lessons are during the middle of the day, so I'm in analytic mode. I'm not smoking at all. I'm working. Oh shit, it's 1 o'clock, and you get on the call, and then all of a sudden you gotta just relax everything and just let the sound come through you naturally and all this stuff. It's a hard brain shift. Whereas when I play guitar at night, it was always, okay, I'll take a couple blips off of the weed pen, and that just kind of relaxes, everything comes out. And my coach is a professional singer. So if you guys have the money to like hire like a good coach or anything, get someone who's going to be on your ass too. And she's like, hey, you have a beautiful fucking voice. I want to hear it. You're holding yourself back. And I know that you're smoking when you do these recording sessions and you send them to me. You sound fantastic, but you need that to not be a crutch. She's like, you're gonna start doing it raw now. I'm like, oh God,
Oh,
oh no.
oh, he's raw dogging it.
And
Oh,
it's tough too, because auditorily I don't have like a full range of sound. My auditory range naturally is the same about my spoken or my vocal range, but when I blend certain strains together, I take certain combinations of different strains off like the vape pen. I usually prefer the vape pen. Then it opens my entire auditory range, and then I could hear certain parts of music that I don't normally hear, visualize it, and then
sure.
reproduce it. So my coach's like, yeah, you got to start doing that without the pen. I'm like,
Mm,
oh no. So I'm working through that process. I
okay.
don't equate weed and alcohol in the same category. Like weed doesn't kill you. It'll make you lazy. It'll make you dumb if you're not naturally motivated. I'm the opposite. I'm moving all the time. So like, I just need to slow it down and be at a normal pace. Um, so so for that, it's more like, all right, well, kind of pulling that vanity card back up. The same thing I used to lose 100 pounds of weight. Like, hey, I don't want to get shut down for prom invitations. I want to be able to have a girlfriend. I want to be able to get laid. I want to be able to at
Yeah.
least entertain the attention of women, whatever that looks like. When I was younger, I was a lot more conservative, wanted like longer term girlfriends and stuff. Same thing as the alcohol thing. Like, hey, my body's going to look like slop if I'm drinking all the damn time. So now it's like with the smoking thing, it's like, I should probably curtail that because I want to put my singing or developing this skill set above that desire, if that makes sense. So whatever that looks like for you in terms of reevaluating what's important to you in life. And for me, I'm a very disciplined thinker, so I mentally visualize my belief system. It is very, very much structured, and you can move these things around as you deem necessary.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think the absolutely, man. I think the coming full circle, it's values. It's putting those values and talking on the vanity too a little bit. Like I for a long time I was like back and forth. I'm like, oh man, am I being a douche? Like I want to look good, right? And at the end of the day, it's like we get one life, and I could either not take care of my body, or I could like, and the consequences of just taking care of one's body is it's going to look nice and it's going to attract a certain amount of people. So I'm kind of saying this to my ego too. Like, it's okay, man. Like, it's okay to focus on some of this stuff or whatever. Two, touching back on the music thing. Like, so I produced music for about 9 years. I was trying to be a DJ. And one of the reasons I quit weed as well was because I realized that like when I was smoking, I was making these like songs from the heaven, right? Like the melodies were just so
Oh, they're
intricate,
beautiful.
beautiful. I'm like, how'd this
But in
come
terms
from
of structuring your
me,
day to
right?
produce the music, no, it's not happening.
No dice. And then I would try to make music sober, and it would just blow ass. It would just be like I've never touched an instrument before. And so I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
you're right. I
painful.
gotta
I can't
it's
I can't hit like basic notes, and then all of a sudden I'm in that mindset, and I'm like, oh, and it's just
that was pretty good.
anything comes out of me. My throat's kind of hoarse today. Fuck. Love Mexico City, but didn't take into consideration the pollution problem here. So that kind of
Oh,
tears up your throat. It's
oh
been
wow.
hot lately, although it should rain tonight. It'll knock it out. So yeah, no, I'm not smoking. I've got a very coarse voice.
Mm,
So should have
sweet.
put
So
put that on my list of
oh,
things to look for in the next city. I did a video on my channel, I think like April of last year, like top 10 reasons to move to Mexico City. And I did my top 10 list of criteria. And you don't realize till you live somewhere things that might annoy you. And when I was here at the time, I lived on the bottom floor and I was under the shade of the trees. Like this is a very green city. So I was under the shade of the trees, like everything felt cool and got nice breeze and like the smog didn't get up there. But I'm in a high rise now. So I open my window and it's just unburnt hydrocarbons all day long that I'm ingesting. It's
damn. That can't
so
be good for you.
no, probably not. Yeah, I'm not gonna live here forever. I've already determined
Oh,
that. But
okay.
yeah,
Of making plans. Like it.
and it's not just me. Like
So
everyone I know usually like, oh yeah, I'm stuffed up too. I'm like, okay, good. I thought I just have like weak
oh.
genetics or something.
It's just interesting. Yeah, we'll have to touch on that on another time, but
Hmm.
we'll take a pause here. I'm gonna go through some of the comments. We have
Yep.
the homie Penchik. I was gonna say Pachink, but that's not. I don't think,
I can't
and
read that alphabet. Yeah.
yeah, so he says, "Good shit, bro. Keep leveling up. Thank you, brother." Um, one chosen one. Right on. Whatever that. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh yeah. No, I always try to do the pointing thing, and
Oh,
this. The camera's reversed
yeah,
for
right.
YouTube, so I'm looking at
Oh, wait.
you over here,
There we
but
go.
I got to point that way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Still screwed
there.
up.
There you go. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Another one from every Sabbath, Sunday, reading, running, praying, breathing. Awesome, man. Yeah, having a religious practice can be very huge, a spiritual practice. And let's see. Yes, sir. 50 days, staying connected, committed. What's up, man? That's what's up. It's just great to hear people that are, on the path. And this is why I keep staying with YouTube. I'm sure Jaren, I would imagine you as well. Just being able to, um, yeah, just see other people that are, your vibe create attracts your tribe. And when I'm surrounded by people that are leveling up, no matter what stage of the journey you're on, it keeps me going every single day. So appreciate that, Pachink. And or I probably shouldn't say the last Pachink. And then yeah, just some nice positive vibes there. So much appreciated, man. Thanks for tuning into the stream. And we have another one here from the homie Emocentric Shorty. Her and I are actually going to be doing a live next week. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about marijuana and how she was able to quit. And Jaren, this is a question for you, my friend. Did drinking screw up your sex drive?
Depends. Not at first. Again, when I was in college, I didn't really drink that much, and if I did, it wasn't to go out to get drunk. So, and I was in good shape. I was playing ball down here, so we do conditioning every morning, weight sessions during the afternoon, during the siesta hours. That they don't really do siestas here anymore, but they did when I was studying down here, and then practice at night. So I was getting like 6 hours of physical activity a day. So that being said, I was in really good shape. So the alcohol, I'm sure it didn't make me to 100%, but performance wise, I was still able to do that. What it did do is I noticed that a lot of guys use alcohol as a crutch to get laid. So, and I've ran into girls like this. Like now, I screen my girls out a different way. And guys, if you want information on that, go to my Instagram, subscribe to my channel. I talk about the dating thing and how I set up my parameters and whatnot. So I don't have that problem anymore. But even when it got to the point where I wasn't drinking that much, I noticed girls would come over and it's like they'd throw back like 4 shots, like they had a routine or a ritual. It's like they had to be a bit slurry to enjoy sex or to be okay with it. And that usually indicated to me that there's like some other kind of issue underlying there. And I didn't want that to surface. So I've
Okay.
cut those types of girls out years ago, but I find myself in that situation where, again, hindsight's always 2020. Didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, yeah, the sex wasn't that good. When you both had to be drunk to do the act. Like nowadays, if I have one or two drinks, I don't feel the same sensations. There's not that connection there. Physically, again, you feel kind of gross. For guys that really, really get drunk, there's the term whiskey dick that it exists. Words exist or expressions or sayings exist for a reason. That is a real thing. If you get too drunk, like Joel, you probably know more than I do as far as like the chemical effect, but something in your brain, it's like it just turns that switch off. Just not going to happen. You're not going to be aroused. I think that the alcohol, well, that's what it is. Because you can do that with weed sometimes too. You can get too high to where like someone's touching you and your brain registers it, but it's like 7 worlds away. You're like, oh, a girl is touching me in an erogenous zone, and your brain, it makes a note of that, but your systems aren't engaged. So alcohol kind of does the same thing. I think it causes a distance or a dissonance in creating connection. And again, I'm sure there's plenty of guys out there, like maybe you've only ever had sex while you're drinking. Well, you don't know what you're missing until you go the other way. You're like, oh, there's more dimensions to it. There's more depth to it. There's more literal physical sensation to it. So I'd say yes and no. If you're in really good shape, yeah, you can probably get away with it. But especially if you're drinking habitually, also what happens too is if you're drinking habitually, then same thing as like using marijuana habitually for a lot of people, where you find yourself not being that social. You're like, oh, I can just sit at home. So you have the relationship with the booze or the other substance, and that gets in the way of you going out and actually putting yourself out there and presenting yourself to women and flirting with them and getting them in the mix and setting the logistics and getting them over and having that one-on-one analog experience face to face. There's nothing quite like that. And again, if you put that layer of alcohol or substance in between there, it's really hard. It's kind of like an artificial interaction with someone. So that can screw things up too. And then again, like obviously if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're like a sloppy drunk, you're probably not getting the best sex in the world. Once I got into like the fitness thing, like I'm not as fit as I was years ago, but in California, I got really into the fitness circles, and I'd go out with those folks. And yeah, like when you're fit and you F a chick who's also fit, It's a lot better. It's really quite enjoyable to the point where that becomes your new standard. And you can't really look back. Like I can't really hook up with a sloppy drunk chick. It just doesn't turn me on. It doesn't work. So I'd say, yeah, drinking it can definitely screw up your drive. It can screw up the physical sensations. It can screw up the performance. It can screw up your game because I'll miss cues all the time. Like, oh, I'll wake up the next day like, oh, what happened to the bar last night? Or, oh, what happened to that cute chick, Sarah? Oh, and then I remember like rolling blackout comes back and she was dropping me off at the hotel and I couldn't even talk. It's like, just get to the room, get to the room. And I'm like, damn, I really screwed that up. That like I was vibing that chick from like 11 p.m. onward. And then rolling blackout comes back like, oh, 3:30 a.m. She's dropping me off in front of my hotel and I don't even know where I'm at. So that'll screw up your game.
Wow.
And then as I mentioned too, as I kind of alluded to, not to shy you away from it, but when you start having better quality physical exchanges with members of the opposite sex, then it gets to the point where like I can't look back. What's a big turnoff for me if a girl comes over and she's completely plastered, like I want nothing to do with her. It's just kind of gross.
Clip
So
that.
that can screw up your sex drive, but in a good way. In a good way, you're like, yeah, I don't want to be putting my D in crazy chicks or drunk chicks.
So, question for you then: why do you think so many people drink and party? This is something I've wondered because I miss kind of like I had a few years of partying, but I stopped drinking at 22. So I've missed 22 to 28 now of drinking, and I think a lot of people drink in this stage. Why do so many people you think do it?
At first, to be honest, it's fun. It feels good. I remember the first time getting drunk, I'm like, whoa, like it was one of the greatest things I'd ever felt before. Sad.
Wow.
We mentioned this on earlier podcasts. Now I have analog experiences that blow those out of the water to the point like, why would I get drunk? Because on the list of things that feel good to me from like a dopamine standpoint, alcohol is so far down there. It's like, why would I even do it? It doesn't make sense. Or the activities I place above alcohol in the hierarchy, those all get reduced in terms of quality if I drink too much. But at first, like when I first got drunk in high school, dude, it was awesome. It was super fun. And there's a bit of like the social fitting in. It's what the cool kids did, but it also made me cool. Like I was a nerd in high school, but when I got drunk, like, hey, shit, this Jaren guy's pretty funny. This guy's pretty awesome. And people wanted me to be around them. They enjoyed my company. Whereas a lot of times, like most of my days, I bring the energy out for these streams or whatnot because you have to. But most of my days, I've got my AirPods in. I'm just head down and clicking away. I'm not super fun to be around. I'm just kind of an automaton at that point. My brain's working. It's coming out via digital work through my fingertips onto my keyboard, but I'm not the life of the party. I'm like, hey guys, what's up? Look at me. I'm not that person naturally. But at first with alcohol, hell yeah, I was that guy. I was definitely that guy. But then again, you find yourself getting too far into it. And you get to that point like, oh, I'm the liability at the party. Like I'm the embarrassing guy at the party. I'm not even at the party. I'm here drinking. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm talking to the other guys who are drinking. I don't even know any of these people. So I think there's that element of it. And then eventually it just becomes habitual is what I think. So it feels good. It feels good the first few times, social element. And then, yeah, it becomes habitual. It just kind of becomes a part of who you are.
Guys, comment down below comment a 1 if you were like Jaren, where you lit up, you became the life of the party. Comment down 2 if you were more you get depressed and go kind of, you'd be the bummer of the party. That's what ended up happening to me. Like I would lose all emotion. All my friends would be like, whoa, we're having a blast, let's go. And I'd be like, dude, I just want to like end my life. not actually, but like I was like, how is this fun? And then I would go like chill in the corner. So
well, for me, it removed the filter too. So I remember even with like girls I dated, like embarrassing things. Like you get to that point where all of a sudden, shoom, like the defense comes down and like some trauma starts coming out or weird shit starts coming out or things that now like I've mostly dealt with, things that now on more of like a meditative or spiritual type experience that you're trying to engage in, that's when those things need to come up and you need to process them and put them in the right boxes or send them away forever and let them flow through you. But for me, it's like I had a lot of anxiety, not social anxiety, but just generalized anxiety. And it lived in my gut. And I always felt like the world is physically pressing on me. So with alcohol, it like kind of made that go away. But all the shit that I buried in my gut, which alcohol does too, It's not a proper way to deal with negative emotions. All that shit buried in your gut, it would just start coming out. So I was no longer the fun guy at the party. It'd be like, hey man, I started my career in defense. It'd be like, hey man, we're working on this project and I'm having like some major ethical issues. And like, and people literally say like, dude, you're a buzzkill. Like you're killing my vibe. And my
Mm.
I've caught people in my family, like not my youngest brother, but one of my brothers, he was in the Marines, same thing. Like after he came out, they don't do like weed or any other drugs or anything. And he's one of those guys. I mentioned him. He's like, all drugs bad, alcohol legal, tobacco legal, ergo good. He's one of those people.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I remember going to a music festival one time. Like I wasn't drinking anymore. I think I was like microdosing mushrooms, which is a completely different experience, completely different frequency. And my brother's talking about, yeah, so I was good, threw some back like I used to do. It's like, yeah, I was, it was pretty tough when I popped my cherry, my first tour of combat or whatever, and like telling the story and like me and my friends that are like, like high in or positive energy, like mushroom type people, no drinking at
Yeah.
all. This one girl I was with, she's like, bro, you're seriously harshing my vibe. Like, can you please just not talk about that at all? My brother, oh, what the fuck's wrong with her? It's like, oh, people don't even realize, what's going on out there. I'm like, you're drunk. Like alcohol is not a proper way to deal with those emotions. In fact, shit, if you didn't believe that all drugs are bad and you microdose with us, we could probably help you heal pretty quickly, to get that shit out there, but not
Mm.
via that frequency of the alcohol inducement. So I caught myself in that situation too. Or like, again, this is years ago. I haven't done this at all in a very long time, but people are like, dude, like you're kind of a buzzkill. And then you notice here, like your prompt earlier in the chat, you'll notice that all of a sudden I went from being the fun guy at the party and everyone always wanted me around. And they're like, hey, like, what's a party without Jaren? To like, do we even invite this guy anymore? So then as you grow into the habit or as you get deeper into the addiction, it's like, now I'm just drinking at home. Or you go to the bar, like the local dingy bar that's close enough to the house. It's like a quarter mile away. So heaven forbid you don't get a DUI, or you can walk home or leave the car or whatever. You go to those bars, and I lived in Texas at the time when I was at peak drinking. So, those like old movies where they're in like some one horse truck stop town or whatever, and they go into the old saloon doors, they creak up
Yeah.
out and open, and there's some sad, sappy old school country playing on the jukebox. I found myself with that crowd of people. I'm like, nah, this definitely isn't me. I don't want to be the depressed guy in like a 1980s, country musical movie. So no, not going to do this at all either. But you eventually
That sounds
become
so
that guy
fun.
because, yeah, like you mentioned, like the frat type parties. For those types of parties, they don't want the buzzkill there. Like,
No.
oh, woe is me, and life is terrible, and it's all bleak, and what's this all for, anyways? So, like, dude, we're trying to have a good time, and you're like,
Yeah.
not about it.
Or even like, yeah, I'm like, I have issues I want to talk about. Like, yeah, no one's gonna entertain that if they're drunk. And yeah, so I was definitely thinking, yeah, mushrooms and alcohol, people, those are not a good mix. Like, you got to be on the same
Well,
vibe. So
on our previous stream, like when I talked about addictions, I didn't even mention mushroom use or any of that. I put that in a different category. I put that in like plant medicine category, or that's like the spiritual category. And I use it as a tool. That's like, it's a completely different class of drugs. Like, hey, we're going to go get messed up on mushrooms. It's like, have fun with that. It's like, all right, there's
right.
something that internal bothering me. I believe I've identified it. We need to go into it with this intent, and we need like
Mm.
it's like a therapy session almost. So I didn't even
Sure.
mention that on our previous stream because mentally I don't put those in the same category.
Okay. Right on. So yeah, we have a few minutes left here, and we're gonna hop into a few more chats came through. We'll answer these. Evening, guys, from our homie Jake. Oh, what's up, Jake? Drinking's a huge anchor on my life. It's thrown me off my peak lots of times in the past. Thanks for sharing, man. It's I think you're not alone in that. And we have a follow up too. It used to liven me up for a few drinks, and I promptly overshoot and act uncalibrated or end up basically sedated. Jerry, you want to comment on this? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so you just let me up for your center promptly overshoot active. Yeah, you know what? Here's a good point too. Like the more not necessarily dependent, but the more desensitized you become to it. This is a big thing for me stopping drinking too. And even now when I drink, which again is very seldom, it's like I don't even really feel drunk. I start feeling shitty before I feel drunk. So I don't really see a point to it. But yeah, socially it uncalibrates me. Whereas again, when I started off like high school or like college days, when I did go out, it was more like, okay, yeah, it opens me up socially. It makes me the life of the party. And then it got to the point where I think the last time I got really, really drunk, 2 years ago, maybe. I think we did like a 1% meetup, or no, was it a year ago? It's something like that. We did a meetup in Nashville, and
Okay.
sure enough, start off the night, life of the party. And I remember at the time, feel like, oh, I feel normal, I feel fine. And that's that story I told you earlier. Met like I think I made out with like a cute black chick who was a dentist, and then ended up talking. Me and one of the Canadian guys ended up talking with like two beautiful blonde girls. And then we went to pull. I remember like kind of head nod. We're like, yeah, time to pull. Let's bring them back to my place. And then I remember again being in the back of this girl drove us back to my place, being in the back of the car. And when we got to my hotel, I didn't even say bye to anyone. I'm just like, I felt so shitty, and just opened the door and like,
Mm,
like just right to the room.
get
I'm
out.
out of here. And the next morning, it's like, damn, that girl is really cool, and she was super hot. And we were having a fantastic time together. And like, I screwed that up. Like, and it's not that I was socially uncalibrated. It's like blacked out. I don't.
Mm,
I didn't remember till the next morning. I'm like, what? Who's this Sarah chick on my phone? And looked at her. I'm like, oh, and we took pictures of each other and stuff. I'm like, and then it came back like, oh, my buddy and I's head nod, like, yeah, let's pull these chicks. And then shoom, fast forward to me pulling up to the hotel and glossy eyed and oh, get out of the damn car. And I'm sure the girl's like what the fuck's going on? The, like I got her to the point where I could pull her from the bar, and then it's like this guy like kind of again, in terms of the hierarchy of things, like I failed to live up to her expectations. So yeah, I probably have an addiction more type in like the game category, but I think that's a healthier maybe addiction, the drinking. But for me, it's like, all right, like I ruined a potentially good time, and like my night could have turned out a lot better than that. And the next day, didn't feel too well, and kind of put a damper on the day. Um, so yeah, I'd say that's when you're getting into it. And again, this is me like not even really drinking anymore, but I think I call it the alcoholic gene, to where like once it triggers, then you're kind of in it. You're in that process
mm,
again. Like, all right,
yeah,
just a random bar adventure type night. And it is
for
fun to
sure.
do that every now and then, but the consequences, they just kind of suck. And then you get to the point where you realize that actually it's not that much fun. I have more fun when I don't do that.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
They talk about that a lot in the recovery groups, is that as soon as you start again, you're right back in it. And that's why a lot of people that maybe they've been even clean for like 20 years, they go back out, and next thing you know, they're like getting DUIs. Their life's just gone to complete shit because they restart back where they stopped drinking. So
Yeah,
that's
it's where you
definitely a
left
thing.
off. Like it,
Yes. Yep.
like if I were to go out right now and do shots, it's not gonna be 16-year-old me at the high school party, like, yeah, guys, what's up? It'll be me like, all right, well, take that back. No, I am pretty fun when I drink now, but I don't drink a lot now. And
But if you started drinking regularly, you might turn into
yes,
that. Yeah.
yes. It's a
For
negative
sure.
feedback loop too, because like you're getting into the gym, like physically, it does all sorts of things to you. It screws with your brain, it screws with your metabolism. You can't do protein synthesis, so for guys looking to try to get
Mm,
gains, not going to happen.
huge.
It's technically the fourth macro, which no dietitians will ever tell you, but as long as there's alcohol in your body, other biological processes, they're not happening. So your body's not building muscles, not burning fat. A lot of times for me, like when I get sick, I never got sick from drinking. It's because whatever I ate earlier in the day, the alcohol interferes with it. So it just sits in my gut and it like rots and turns rancid, which is really
Mm,
gross. So like
interesting.
I'll be done drinking at like midnight, and then the next day at 3 p.m. I'm like feeling kind of woozy, and then boom, like everything I ate the previous day, it's like your body just stops all of its other processes because it, alcohol can't be stored. I mean, it goes to the bloodstream, but you can't store it in a fat cell. It doesn't get stored in glycogen like your like glucose does, or it doesn't help build any new tissues. It is an energy source calorically, so your body prioritizes the metabolism of it. That's why a lot of times, like for me, if I have a drink, like immediately I'm like, whoa, like I get a little pick me up, because normally I'm carb deprived and I eat like a really clean diet. So that's an easy energy source. Plus, your body has to get rid of it. Can't do anything else with ethanol. It'll sit in your bloodstream, and if it gets too high, then you die. Like your body has to eliminate it. So there's a bunch
Mm,
of other things too in terms of what happens to you, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But it creates a negative feedback loop to where like, all right, well, now you feel shitty if you don't do it, so you do it a little more, and then the more you do it, the more shitty you feel when you're not doing it, and it kind of that's when you say getting back into it. That's how I kind of view it, as that negative feedback loop. Another rule too for me drinking, when I do go out to have a drink, I have to be in a good emotional state. If I'm in a positive emotional state, then okay, yeah, I can go out. Like I had a whiskey last night. I was having a great day. I was just feeling really good. So I'm not going to overdo it because I'm feeling like this. But if I drink too much, it's going to pull me down to here.
Yeah,
Whereas to the contrary, if I'm having a really shitty day, I might feel like I'm here, and that booze, that
that
drink,
was
it's going to be above how I'm currently feeling. Well, that's where trouble begins to happen. So that's a rule I have for myself too. I have to be in a good emotional state or a positive emotional state. Uh, it be socially for me to go out and embark upon that.
I like that's a good boundary, man. And we'll have to have a convo again on boundaries and setting boundaries just in general with life, business, etc. I think that'd be a really good talk. So yeah, and Jake as well. I wanted to also add to that. I was like you. I'm much better sober or whatever that means. I mean, obviously, without substances, I'm much better socially. And I noticed that in high school, like my best times with mates was when I wasn't using. And I would always, whenever I started drinking or partying, I would just get weird. Like that's how I say it. I would just get weird. Weed was a little different. I didn't get as I enjoyed weed a lot more. With alcohol though, I always kind of yeah, went to the some dark places. So I think it oh, you're on mute, Jared.
So I notice alcohol brings the worst out of people. Like guys eventually get to that point
Yeah.
where I used to call it for me the fucker fight energy, but I've never been a fighter. I always thought that was kind of stupid. I could always defuse any sort of social type situations, and I just don't get myself involved with people like that. But for me, it was always like you got that energy, like that whoa, 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 that type of energy. Whereas for weed, it's more like, all right, I want to chill, like I want to explore the universe and dissect some really cool ideas, and
Yeah.
you know, maybe play a little music or watch like a really cool movie like Avatar,
Yeah.
the first one back in the day. Oh, that was the shit
Oh,
high.
dude.
Whereas
Bro.
for alcohol, like all the colors would be blurring and you'd be like, whoa, no, get me
Too
out of here.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
much. And the food too, the munchies, man. I mean, we both talked about I was an overeater as well, and the munchies, dude. But cool. So we'll wrap up here. We got one last thing from Emocentric Sorority again. Joel, did whatever stop working while drinking? I'm not sure entirely what that means.
Oh,
Well,
no, it's a follow up from the earlier question about your sex drive. Like, do you ever just fail to perform?
oh, dude, yeah.
For
When you
for
were
me, there's
saying the
major
whiskey dick,
desensitization.
I was laughing
Yes.
because I had a disappointing experience. We drank a lot of whiskey and we did a lot of Molly. So the Molly made confidence was like
Yeah.
here, but the whiskey made the performance way down here. And it was just, it's like,
The
oh,
brain, yeah, it's like the brain to dick connection. It gets severed. Like your brain registers, oh, hot
so,
chick, naked, tits on my chest, rubbing my shaft. Like your brain's like, okay, I should be aroused, but the drug or the substance or the effect is from like a chemical standpoint, it's up here and sex is down here. So it's like
yeah,
your physical hardware just never comes online.
that's exactly what happened. And it was all whiskey that night.
And it's
And I think
frustrating because you're like,
it
hey,
was,
like
it's terrible.
I
I
can
was like, you
fucking dick a
fucking,
chick down, but like what's going on here? So you'd just rather not get in those situations.
yeah, yeah. The-
Which, like I said, weed can do that too. For me, like really racy, like high speed sativas can do that too. Where like I'm thinking of the concept of getting laid as this like naked, beautiful human is in front of me, and it like there's just a disconnect there. So like normally you gotta wait a little bit or get super uber focused and like, okay, this is the only thing I'm focusing this sativa energy on, and then usually you can get going again. But I don't usually sit up and smoke too
it's
much.
It's so annoying because it's like when you I don't know how to say it. No, I do know how to say it. When you have like a really awesome work opportunity, but you just can't you you're just like not you miss it. You're just like missing a great work opportunity where you're gonna make some good money and you just I don't know. I'll think
Yeah.
of a better analogy another day, but
It's like that
um
story I told, like the hot blonde chick in Nashville. Like to this day, I was like, God, that chick was cool. And like, it wasn't even for like the one night smash. Like we were vibing enough to the point. Like anytime I go to Nashville, I'd like to see this chick again. Or if she ever comes here, like I have a lot of relationships like that in my life. So it's not like, oh, I missed the opportunity to get a nut off. Okay, yeah, you can. As a guy, as long as you're not like a weirdo or you're not like grossly out of shape, it's not really hard to do that. But for me, it's like building those connections of those relationships. And that's, you'll notice if you listen to this stream back that I talk about that, it blurs the lines between, okay, this is where I end and this new person begins. We need to become one for this act of intimacy. Alcohol blurs that to point like, okay, yeah, the sensation feels good, but there's like nothing, no energy exchange between us. And for me, like that's the opportunity. I'm like, oh, that was a missed opportunity. You know, like we were having a really good time, and you could feel that energy from another person towards you, and it's almost intoxicating in and of itself. Which again, in my hierarchy of feel good effects, let's say that's a lot higher what I just described than like, oh, let's get drunk. So for me, it was like, oh yeah, missed opportunity. Like, damn it. And it sounds like kind of that's like your work situation. Like, damn, that deal fell through.
Right.
And it's all my fault. And it's all my fault.
Yeah,
that's the worst part. And it's all on me. Like the chip was down.
Oh man, yep. Well, on that note, guys, I think we'll call it a night.
We'll end it on a high when your member's down low.
Sorry, buddy. Jaren, thanks for coming on, man. Where can people find you, and I'll reach out to you and connect?
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Anytime. So Instagram at Jaren Scott is the easiest place to find me. I do one-on-one coaching type offers. If you want to come up and like collaborate on my channel, that's fine too. And then I also have a group called the Top 10% Group. It is an extension of Rich Cooper of Entrepreneurs in Cars, Top 1% Group, just a much lower price point for people that aren't quite at the entrepreneur level yet. It's $997 US dollars or $997 US dollars. That is a lifetime membership fee that gets you discounted coaching, courses, any sort of premium content for myself, Rich Cooper, the other admins in there. We're all on Rich Cooper's top 1% generals group. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And then the real value is the network in terms of we're still pretty new. We have like just shy of 100 guys, but we're getting some really solid dudes in there. So making a lot of meetup opportunities, starting to talk some business, starting to collaborate more in our professional lives. A lot of work is getting done. A lot of guys are having higher quality relationships with their significant others or the dating game, whatever that looks like for you. A lot of guys are curtailing the drinking, and a lot of guys are losing a lot of weight too. So wherever you're at, whatever you're looking for, there's definitely someone in there that could help you out there, or if you just want it for the network effect. That's really the main purpose of the group. Started doing some meetups. We do pretty routine calls for Q&A sessions. We do some specialized workshops. So there's always something going on there. Again, guys, if you want to take your progress in terms of whatever you want to call it, your transformation, your journey, your self-improvement story, whatever that is, then that's a good place to take it to the next level. Again, top 10% group, $997 US dollars. Hit me up on Instagram at Jaren Scott to do that. And then you can also find my channel. If you want to check out some more of my stuff, then go to Instagram at Jaren Scott. There's a link to the YouTube channel. Be sure to check out the videos, like, subscribe, share, comment, recommend to your friends, and make sure you enable all notifications if you subscribe due to the nature of my content. And then do the same for Joel's channel while you're here. If we still got your attention.
Thanks,
like, subscribe.
Thanks, Jaren.
Yep.
And guys, you will definitely be seeing Jaren again. I think Steve might be the one still in this. So shout out, Steve.
Yeah. What up, Steve?
What up, Steve? Oh, we got two Steves. And
Nice.
yeah, guys. Also, I'm gonna post a comment one more time. If you guys want a free recovery resource, it has about 30 plus different free meetings, support groups, Buddhist inspired meetings, movies, YouTube channels, etc. Check this out. I got sober through free resources, and because I didn't have a lot of money, and so it was a big help. If you do want more personal one-on-one coaching help, etc., I do that as well. You can find the link on some of my other YouTube videos. Maybe I'll drop it in here too. And you can book a free call with me, and we can talk and see if I can be of help to you in any way. Also, we're going to be starting. I'm going to be doing a lot more live soon. You're going to see Jaren on again for sure. And we're going to be starting, I think both of our channels are going to be doing a private membership group. So after our main live stream, which will be a little more PG, we'll keep it, PC and stuff. Maybe not too super PC, but we'll hop on to like an after hour show. You guys can come on. We can just you guys can come on, even pop on the stream, ask questions, etc. We can just talk about really whatever we want. And there'll be a couple other options too, so you can get more involved in the community and get some help that way, or just be part of the crew. So guys, thanks so much for watching tonight. We'll talk to you guys soon, and much love and peace out.
Yep. Cheers.